I'm Pam Sawyer, and welcome to Representative Sawyer Reports. Talking with kids these days is so very important, and we have a topic that is one that's a little delicate, perhaps, one that all the kids seem to know about, and not necessarily the parents, but it's getting more and more play. The topic tonight is sexting, and with me tonight is Fran Carino, and he is the Supervisory Assistant State's Attorney. He is out of Rocky Hill with the State's Attorney's Office. And welcome, thank you for being here tonight.
My pleasure.
Describe sexting, because maybe we've heard, some people have heard about it, some people haven't. And of course, texting is fairly new as a media outlet for most people.
Well, there's really no legal definition of sexting at this point. The common definition is the practice of sending sexy images or messages via cell phone or email or other electronic device, or posting those images on the internet. There's really no legal definition, but that's what is commonly used. As you know, Connecticut has a new law that governs the practice of sexting, but even in that law, it doesn't define the term sexting. It makes reference to the statutory definitions of child pornography and incorporates that in its definition. And in Connecticut law, the definition of child pornography refers to any visual depiction of a person under the age of 16 engaging in what's called sexually explicit conduct, which is in itself pretty broad definition. It includes just about every form of sexual behavior involving people, objects, or animals. So it's a very broad definition, and sexting is incorporated in those two definitions.
You know, the sexting involving pictures, if my understanding is correct, is it pictures only, or do words play into this as well?
Well, again, in a general sense, it includes both images as well as text-type messages. But in the Connecticut statute, because its definition is defined by the child pornography definition, it's limited to depictions, which would be pictures or video, even if those pictures are computer generated. But as I read the Connecticut statute, it doesn't apply to text-type messages without a picture.
And, you know, we're going to hear, I think, from some people that, you know, kids are going to be kids and, you know, they're just doing a little mischief. But how do we deal with that within the law? How are we dealing with that as a state?
Well, you're right. Kids will be kids, and as such, kids do stupid things. They don't always think before they act. They don't think about the consequences of their actions. And even if they do stop and think about the consequences of their actions, because of their immaturity, their lack of life experiences, they don't always fully understand or appreciate the consequences of what they do. And so I think that's the big concern when we're dealing with kids in this particular subject. They don't always think before they push that send button.
So we've had a situation where kids somebody's decided that they're going to take a snapshot of something that is very visually alluring or inappropriate, that many people would call inappropriate, and they send the button, and it's been sent off. What are the consequences of sending one of these pictures, say, and it gets out to other kids and classmates, and then shows up and one of the adults catches on to this and everything breaks loose?
Well, there are a number of consequences. Let me start with the legal consequences. Obviously, if a person's conduct violates the law, there could be criminal consequences. The legal consequences depend on your age. If you're under the age of 17, you're considered to be a child in Connecticut for prosecution purposes, and so your case could be handled in the juvenile court. And depending on the specific violation of the law, kids in juvenile court are facing a maximum commitment to the Department of Children and Families of 18 months for this type of an offense, which means that kid could be removed from his home, removed from his school, removed from his community, and placed in a state institution somewhere for up to 18 months. At the end of that 18 months, the Department of Children and Families could come back to court and say that the commitment should be extended another 18 months, and the court has the authority to do that. So a child under the age of 17 could conceivably be sent away for up to 3 years for this type of behavior. Now, that's not likely to happen, but it is the maximum penalty that the juvenile court can impose. If you are 17 and your behavior falls within the new state law, you're looking at a possible jail sentence of up to 1 year. If you're 17 or older, or for whatever reason you don't fit within the parameters of the new law, then you're talking about a conviction for child pornography, which, depending on the number of pictures you're in possession of, could be as high as a prison sentence of 20 years. So it is very significant, the criminal possibilities. But I think for kids, it's not so much the legal consequences they need to be concerned about, it's the other consequences. And beyond the criminal consequences, I think the kids need to be aware of what happens when those pictures get out there. Probably the first thing that they need to be aware of, and you would think it's common sense, but again, kids just don't think about this stuff, is once that picture goes out, that you push that send button and that picture is out there, you lose complete control over that picture. You don't know who's going to see it, who's going to have it, who's going to do what with it, how somebody's going to respond to it, where they're going to put that picture. You've totally lost control. And that's really important, because that's where the consequences start to kick in.
So you could be talking about a situation where a sexual predator gets a hold of this as well, can use it in other ways. And certainly we know that pictures that go through texting can also be sent to someone's computer.
Now, even more common probably than the possibility of a sexual predator getting hold of it, kids need to be concerned about their own personal well-being and their own reputation. I'll give you an example. A 14-year-old girl sends a sexy picture to her 14-year-old boyfriend. You know, they're in love, it's for his eyes only, and she thinks he'll really appreciate the picture. So she sends him the picture. Well, he's a 14-year-old boy. He's going to get the picture. When he gets the picture, he's going to show it to his buddy. Now, the girl never intended the picture to go beyond her boyfriend, but being a 14-year-old boy, he's going to share it with his friend. He's going to email it to him. He's going to post it on a website or something. And that kid's going to take it, and he's going to send it to somebody else. And now the picture just is out there. And if it's posted on some website somewhere on the internet, it's there for the whole world to see. I mean, there's a reason they call it the World Wide Web. And so that girl now who sent the picture to that one boy thinking it was for his eyes only has now literally exposed herself to the entire world. And that has serious consequences as well. A number of people out there, police, school admissions officers, loan officers, relatives, not uncommon for them to use the various search engines and various other resources on the internet to find out about people, to look people up. And it's not uncommon for somebody to Google a person's name just to see what's out there on the internet about them. If you put in a child's name, and up comes some type of a sexually oriented picture or comment or something else that's inappropriate like that, that's going to be forever attached to that person's name. And that could cause them some problems. So, you know, if that picture is out there and, like I said, somebody looks them up because they've applied for a job, they've applied to go to a school, they've applied for a loan, if that picture is associated with the name and it's visible to the public like that, don't be surprised if you don't get the job, you don't get admitted to school, and that loan is denied.
You know, we have heard so often, you know, just delete, you know, here, delete there. But some of this stuff, once it gets out on the internet, there's almost no way to totally to retrieve it.
Yeah, that's the problem. If there's a picture out there and you discover that it's on a site, you could ask that person to remove the picture from that site. And sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. But even if they do, you don't know if somebody else anywhere in the world may have seen that picture, downloaded that picture, copied that picture, and posted it somewhere else. Once it's out there, like I said, you've completely lost control. You don't know who's seen it, who's downloaded it, who's posted it somewhere else, and where that picture is at that point. But these things have a way of popping back up.
I happen I apologize for using a brand name, but I happen to have a Google alert, and it's set up for my name to find out when things are out there, because I'm in the public eye. Sure. To know what's going on. It's a way to keep in touch as well. And I was so surprised today to see an article that was yesterday, which came up as a Google alert. Fine, that's what I expected. I expected that local newspaper to have it. That made sense. This morning it shows up on something from California that captures different topics that are environmental, and it showed up in the exact same article, but on a whole different website, and way out of state, on a different coast, from a group that I had never heard of. So I do get a sort of a chill up my spine thinking about a young person, be it male or female, taking a picture that they think makes them look voluptuous, makes them look sophisticated and beautiful and sexy in the eyes of someone that they want to notice them, and somebody takes that and, as you described, could be extremely innocent or very proud, showing it to somebody, or they can't get a hold of them because they're in another class and they send it to them. So then we have this ripple effect going very fast and could be everywhere.
And it's that lack of control over who's going to see that puts these kids, not only presents a problem for these kids, it also could potentially put them in danger. Kids also need to understand that these are digital pictures. When you send a photo like that through the internet or an email or a text message, it's a digital picture, which anybody can download, and then using readily available, easy to use photo editing software can manipulate that picture. So one example I use when I talk to the kids is, suppose you're a 15-year-old boy and you're at a party at somebody's house. Everything's on the up and up, nothing bad is going on at that party, everybody's just having a good time, having fun. You're sitting on the couch with a bunch of your buddies, you're fooling around, you're laughing, you're drinking sodas, and somebody snaps a picture. Completely harmless activity, completely harmless photo. But somebody who doesn't like you gets hold of that picture because you send it to somebody or it ended up on somebody's website somewhere. Now they take that picture and, using that easy-to-use photo editing software, change what is really a can of Coke in your hand,
I can see where this is going,
to a can of beer. And now you've got to explain to your parents and anybody else that sees that picture, why were you at that party drinking beer? And you weren't. But boy, it's going to look like that in that picture. And once that picture gets out, again, unless you can pull back every one of those pictures that's out there, you're probably going to have to be explaining that for a long time to come.
Particularly an underage person.
Sure.
And underage in this state, of course, is 21 when it comes to alcohol.
Yeah.
So here's someone who's 19, 20, they're at university, they're studying hard, they're hanging with a group of people, they have soda cans. Yeah. And somebody starts playing, and because they want to do a gotcha or they're teasing them. Could be fairly innocent, but it could get very serious very quickly. So now we take it as something that is sexting. We're going to use a young girl. We're going to say that she's at a party and she's worn a tank top and she's worn push-up accoutrements underneath to make things look bigger than perhaps they are. And she's trying to look older. She's trying to look cuter. She's trying to look sexier. And somebody takes a picture standing above her and takes a picture down and gets this very large cleavage. When does it become sexting? You said child pornography. We'll say that this girl is 15, but it is definitely looking down her blouse.
Well, again, child pornography is defined in our statutes as a picture of somebody under the age of 16 engaging in sexually explicit conduct. So if it's just a picture of her standing there doing nothing, that's probably not going to meet the definition.
Okay.
If she's standing there and appearing to do something of a sexual nature, then that may very well fit the definition. There's also exceptions for purely artistic pictures, modeling pictures and things like that. But it's the definition of sexually explicit conduct that's going to make it pornography, and it becomes child pornography if they're under 16.
And is there a difference if it's between a person who the person takes a picture of themselves, or a person who takes a picture of someone unknowingly? Is that a difference within the law?
Yeah, that would be considered voyeurism if somebody took a picture without the person's consent. But the laws regarding sexting, the new law, it reduces the penalty for transmitting these types of pictures, but only when the person is of a certain age and the picture is of themselves. So if a 14-year-old girl takes a picture of herself and sends it to her 14-year-old boyfriend, that's going to fit within the parameters of the new law for a reduced penalty. But if that 14-year-old boyfriend then takes the girl's picture and sends it to somebody else, he's not going to get the benefit of the new law's reduced penalties. He's going to be possibly involved with felony behavior.
If he sends it to multiple people, does that change things?
It's not so much the number of people you send it to. What is in the child pornography laws, the level of seriousness depends on the number of pictures you have in your possession.
How easy is it, right? You got the cell phone, some activity, they think it's fabulous, and they want to take a picture of it, and they want to save it to their cell phone, and they get giggling, and in the middle of the night, she sends it off to her girlfriend. Her girlfriend sends it off to her boyfriend, and it snowballs that way. That is, would we say inappropriate touching fits also for sexting? If someone else's hands are in the wrong spot?
Yeah, that would probably make a picture considered to be sexually explicit conduct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I know I'm asking perhaps some uncomfortable questions that are difficult, questions that are, I think, important for parents to hear, important for the kids to hear, because they have a tough road to hoe as they're growing up as teenagers. They have to deal in a world in which there's alcohol readily available. Unfortunately, there are drugs too readily available for them. They have to deal with all the laws that we have for them as soon as they start to drive. And we have, of course, given them, so many of them, a cell phone, usually on the idea that the parents think for safety reasons.
Yes, they need the cell phone.
But it's fun. You know, take pictures and send those along, and then the parents sometimes get the bills and don't like that part. But we have, it's a new world and very different from even 10 years ago. We stopped a lot of cell phones in schools. Certainly back when they were beepers. We started in with ruling that schools had to make rules about beepers and cell phones because they're distracting in the classrooms. But boy, is it, you hear that they're in class and whatever, and they put that little cell phone, and it's in their lap under their desk, and the teacher's talking, and these kids can text with their thumbs without even looking. And they're going back and forth, and then they carefully glance down or whatever. This stuff can go like wildfire. And
that's part of the problem, is the speed with which this all happens. Because, you know, a kid could have the cell phone, as you said, in a locker room, in a bathroom, take a picture, you know, just spontaneously take a picture, and within seconds, upload that picture to a website or send it out to somebody before they even had a chance to think about it. And I recall a case recently where I had a girl who was asked by her boyfriend to send him a sexy picture of her. And so upon getting the request, she goes into the bathroom and takes a picture of herself topless and sends it out to him. When I was questioning her, I asked her, how much time went by between the time you got the request for the picture and the time you sent it out? And she said, oh, a couple of minutes. In other words, she never even had time to think about it. She got the request, took the picture, off it went. So when we talk about kids understanding and thinking about the consequences of their actions, she didn't even give it any thought. She just did it and then thought about it later. But it's too late later. The picture was already out there. And unfortunately, in that case, he did exactly like I said before. He shared it with his friends, who shared it with their friends, and before you know it, everybody in the school had access to that picture.
So a parent, let's say, put the onus now on the parents. The parents have a daughter they find, and she's crying in her room. They find out what's wrong, that this photo that she meant for private eyes only has now taken off, and it's developed a life of its own. The parents are very upset, and they want to get to the bottom of it. They find that it was done maliciously by someone, and they want to take it somewhere. What do they do with that information?
Well, at that point, that sounds like it's a police matter. You know, I would say if it was, the situation was discovered early, you say the parents discovered the pictures on the girl's phone, it's incumbent upon the parents to sit down with that child and say, look, what's going on here? Explain to them the risks, the dangers, and why it's wrong. And then if there's a discovery that those pictures are being sent to some other kid, then the parent of the girl needs to talk with the parent of the other kid and say, look, do you know this is going on? And we need to be on the same page here. And at some point, if it becomes a law enforcement matter, you have to go to the police. Because in those situations, that kid could be in some kind of danger. And it's at that point where the parent has to be the parent of the kid, not the kid's friend. And the parent has to serve in their capacity as protector of that child. In hope that it can be, you know, a stop can be put to it. But oftentimes, by the time it gets to that point, horse is already out of the barn, and there's not much anybody can do. But I think it's important that parents talk to their kids. It's important that parents monitor what the kids are doing on the electronic device, whether it be cell phones or computers or whatever, and have that conversation with the kids. I spoke to a group, at one point, a group of parents about this subject, and I told them that, as parents, it's your responsibility to monitor your kids' activities. And one parent asked me, well, can I look at my child's cell phone? Isn't that a violation of their right to privacy? And I said, you're the parent. You can look at their cell phone, and you have to look at their cell phone. You probably paid for the cell phone, you probably paid for the service of that cell phone, and you're the parent. You make the rules. Even though what the kid is doing may not be a technical violation of the law, you're not a law enforcement officer. You're not bound by the law. You're the kid's parent. And if you're aware of something that your child is doing that they shouldn't be doing, as a parent, you can take appropriate action. You don't have to wait for the legislature to pass a law to say, oh, that activity is illegal. If you don't approve of it, and it's your child, your family, you make the rules. And as long as they're reasonable, that's your responsibility.
We're talking about students here. We're talking about kids who are under the age of 18, kids who are minors, which the parents still have control over them. I do know that kids will say to their parents that it's mine, it's my privacy, you don't have the right to look at this. And you're very true that it's not a law that they can't look at whether it's their cell phone, look at their grades, look at their school books, look at their papers. They're the parents. They have actually the authority under law.
True.
Because of the parental situation of having a minor in their house, in their home, to be taken care of, that they have the right to look at those items.
They have the responsibility to do that too, in my opinion. The Constitution says that as citizens, we have to be free of unreasonable searches and seizures, and that's true. But that applies to government actions, law enforcement actions, police actions, not parents. Again, you make the rules in your house, and part of it is the parent's responsibility. And again, you're doing it to protect the child. If the child doesn't like you looking at their cell phone, then you take the cell phone away. And the child could say, well, I need the cell phone, I have to have the cell phone. Well, many of us grew up without cell phones. We didn't have cell phones at home, we didn't have cell phones at school, and somehow we managed to get along. So again, as parents, you have to exercise your duties and responsibilities as parents.
And it's all a teaching tool.
It is.
When you're working with your child on each and every adventure. But we have a situation where, say, we have this 15-year-old, and he has received a photograph. He has sent this photograph out, and he gets in trouble for it. Let me ask you the important question here, where you have the parents of a minor in this situation. Do they have any, under the law, any problems that could fall back on them?
Well, I suppose if the child causes some kind of harm by their actions, under certain circumstances, the parent has parental liability for the actions of their child. So there may be some civil responsibility there. If somebody can show that there was some damage or some harm caused by the child, and the parent either knew about it or should have known about it or failed to supervise that child adequately, there could be some civil liability in some situations, yes.
I think that's a very important point. Parents are still going to be the parents, and under the law, they're responsible for these young kids, and that's why it's important for them to continue to teach this whole time. I can see where this law would be very important to know about the sexting law. Where can people find out more information about it?
Well, it's a public law, so you can get the information at the library. It's a fairly new law, as you're aware, and only recently went into effect, so there's not a lot of case law. There aren't a lot of court decisions on it yet. But a number of places, including Andover-Hebron-Marble's AHMU Service Bureau, put together a program that was well attended by parents, where they brought in an expert on internet safety to talk to parents about these very issues. And again, the purpose was to inform parents about the dangers and inform parents about exactly what they can do to protect their kids. And like I said, it was very well attended. And those types of programs are offered periodically, and parents can refer to those by going to one of those, or they can look on the internet under internet safety. Just punch that into Google and you'll get hundreds of sites, I'm sure, that'll give parents information and tips on how to deal with that situation.
And they certainly can go to the Connecticut General Assembly website, which is cga.gov, and they can go in, and if they can work it just a little bit, they can go into the statutes and they could find it that way. Sure. As well.
Yeah, there's a summary of the public acts, and I believe it's Public Act 10-191, I believe is the new sexting law. And if you look at the summary of that law that was done, that's on that website, a very informative piece.
Well, certainly sexting is going to be, I think, around for a while. It's going to be a problem for young people, and as your description of its impact on their future, I think it's something that we've got to talk about, and it's going to have to be talked about for generations to come. I don't see that this technology is going to go away anytime soon.
No.
I don't see that young people are going to turn away from something that is, I don't want to say right or wrong, but it certainly goes with the territory of young teenagers, and that is the issue of their sexuality and the issue of wanting to be accepted, wanting to be the best that they can be, whether it's with sports or whether it is with the opposite sex. They want to be attractive as well. So it's going to be around, and each and every generation is going to have to be taught about this.
Yes.
You know, we could talk about it now, we can have the show now, and in 3 years, it's another whole set of kids that's now 14 and 15 years old.
And in 6 months from now, there may be a whole new technology that we have to deal with, because things change so rapidly. Just if you look back the last 5 years, how much technology has changed. It seems to be changing at an increasing rate. And so I bet 6 months from now, there'll be something new that we'll be dealing with. And it may not be anything that we have any idea about today, but it's going to be different in 6 months.
The sexting law, I know, was carefully crafted. There were hearings on it, and many people, like yourselves, was brought in to try and find a workable answer. But they also wanted it to be strict and tough, because the damage that can do to someone's reputation is huge and could be lifelong. So it's important with this particular type of law that we're sensitive to kids, that it is, as you're describing, it's under the child pornography laws. So kids need to be aware that it is pornography that they're sending out there, not just a love picture that they're sending along, and that it is something that is very very sensitive and very fragile.
What the people also need to be aware of is when the legislature passed that law, it wasn't a case where the legislature says we're condoning sexting, we're approving of that, we're making it legal. That's not what they did. As I read the legislative intent, the purpose was to recognize that kids are doing this and maybe soften the penalty so they're not being convicted of felonies by doing this, but at the same time it's still, they're saying it's illegal.
And it's wrong.
And it's wrong. And there are penalties for it. And so I think I wouldn't want the general public to say, well, the legislature passed a law on sexting, reducing the penalties from felonies to misdemeanors, they must condone the activity. That's not the case.
Frank Carino from the State's Attorney General's office, I'd like to thank you very, sorry, I take that back, the State Attorney's Office, of which it's different from the Attorney General's. Thank you for being here today and describing sexting for us and the new law.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you very much.
Thank you.